Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Jagadguru Siddhaswarup Ananda Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Shishima. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shikoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Ganges Maya Ki Jai, Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur's Road Mission Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to this. All glories to Shishi Guru and Varanga Gauranga. Well, thank you for joining us on this auspicious Ekadasi day. At least it's Ekadasi here in Hawaii today. Not sure if it is where you are or not.
Ekadasi here.
What's that?
It's Ekadasi here in New Mexico.
Oh, it is? Okay. I think it's just the East Coast where it's tomorrow then. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshulun Militam Jena Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Darati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual masters have opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter at his lotus? So today we're reading from the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Canto 8, Chapter 3, Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender. And we're on text 10 today. I think it's where we left off. And we're going to continue to read the purports by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada just because they're especially wonderful. They're always wonderful, but this one's very nice. Yeah. Translation.
Are you sure we did 8 and 9?
I thought so, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Anyone remember?
My computer was on verse 7.
Oh, really?
From last week. So, but I don't know if we went forward and then went back.
Well, let's just start with 8, 9 then.
Okay.
No harm having a little bit of
repetition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transcendental repetition.
It's just I remember this, but that's because I read it a couple of times already. So, okay, 8 and 9. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material birth, activities, name, form, qualities, or faults. To fulfill the purpose for which this material world is created and destroyed, he comes in the form of a human being like Rama or Lord Krishna by his original internal potency. He has immense potency and in various forms, all free from material contamination, he acts wonderfully. He is therefore the Supreme Brahman. I offer my respects to him. Purport. In the Vishnu Purana, it is said, Gunamaischa domaischa smunye vayite samshtata kalyana gunamatahihi. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material form, qualities, or faults. He is spiritual and is the only reservoir of all spiritual qualities. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.8 by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parichjana sarvana menashu chadushkritam. The Lord's activities of saving the devotees and annihilating the demons are transcendental. Anyone annihilated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead gets the same result as a devotee who is protected by the Lord. Both of them are transcendently promoted. The only difference is that a devotee goes directly to the spiritual planets and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord, whereas demons are promoted to Brahmaloka, the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. Both of them, however, are transcendently promoted. The Lord's killing or annihilating of the demons is not exactly like the killing of this material world. Although he appears to act within the modes of material nature, he is nirguna, above the modes of nature. His name is not material. Otherwise, how could one get liberation by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Rama? The names of the Lord, like Rama and Krishna, are non-different from the person, Rama and Krishna. Thus, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one constantly associates with Rama and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore becomes liberated. A practical example is Ajamil, who always remained transcendental to his activities simply by chanting the name Narayan. If this is true of Ajamil, what is to be said of the Supreme Lord? When the Lord comes to this material world, he does not become a product of matter. This is confirmed throughout Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma chame divyam avajanti mam mudhar mushnanam tanum ashvishtam. Therefore, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rama or Krishna, descends to act transcendentally for our benefit, we should not consider him an ordinary human being. When the Lord comes, he does so on the basis of his spiritual potency. Sambhavamani Atma Mayaya. Because he is not forced to come by the material energy, he is always transcendental. One should not consider the Supreme Lord an ordinary human being. Material names and forms are contaminated, but spiritual name and spiritual form are transcendental. And we're going to see a practical example of this at the end of this chapter when Krishna appears on the back of Garuda and cuts the head off of the crocodile to save Gajendra. And both of them are liberated. Text 10. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the self-effulgent Supersoul, who is the witness in everyone's heart, who enlightens the individual soul, and who cannot be reached by exercises of the mind, words, or consciousness. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, cannot be understood by the individual soul through mental, physical, or intellectual exercises. It is by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the individual soul is enlightened. Therefore, the Lord is described here as Atma Pradipa. The Lord is like the sun, which illuminates everything and cannot be illuminated by anyone. Therefore, if one is serious about understanding the Supreme, one must receive enlightenment from him, as instructed in Bhagavad Gita. One cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's mental, physical, or intellectual powers. So this is a very important concept to understand. It's important that we are very clear on this. this process of devotional service is not a mechanical process. Even though we engage in certain activities that in the beginning, when we have no taste for Krishna's names, we have no taste for devotional service. So we may perform them out of a sense of obligation, or we may perform them out of a desire for liberation, or we may have so many ulterior motives, whether it's to get promoted to the heavenly planets, or to get money or fame or adoration, or just to feel like we're doing the right thing. These are all activities that as we become purified, the activities, instead of being a means to an end, become the end themselves. And this is the unique nature of devotional service. In all the other different 7 yoga processes, the end is different than the means. You perform certain activities to achieve a certain goal. But in devotional service, the goal is devotional service. So in the beginning, when we're practicing and our hearts are still contaminated with so many materialistic desires and misunderstandings, we won't be fully tasting the nectar that's there inherent in that devotional service. But when our hearts become cleansed and our eyes become treated with the salve of love, and we can actually start to see Krishna as he is with our spiritual vision, then the activities don't change. We still engage in Krishna's loving service. The actual activities may vary slightly, according to time, place, and circumstance, but the essence of them do not. So what it is also means is that if I am not consciously cultivating that desire to be engaged in a loving relationship with Krishna, then we may chant and perform so many so-called devotional processes for many years, maybe even many births. But if we're not cultivating that desire to actually having that loving relationship with Krishna, Krishna will not force that relationship on you. So it's critical, it's essential that we, while we're practicing this, going through the sadhana bhakti process, that we're cultivating as much as possible that consciousness of acting with affection, whether it's chanting with affection or offering artik or guru puja with affection, or going out and doing our daily, what appears to be material work to support our life, our body. If we're dedicating our life to Krishna, it all becomes transcendental. But it will not be forced on us. Love for Krishna will not be forced on us. We have to want it, we have to desire it, we have to accept it. Krishna's love for us is unconditional. It's always there. There's nothing you can do to make it so that Krishna no longer loves you. But there are things that you can do that will make it so that that love becomes hidden or covered. Text 11. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized by pure devotees who act in the transcendental existence of Bhakti Yoga. He is the bestower of uncontaminated happiness and is the master of the transcendental world. Therefore, I offer my respect unto him. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be understood only by devotional service. Bhaktimam abhijananti yavanyas chashmi tatvataha. If one wants to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead in truth, one must take to the activities of devotional service. These activities are called sattva or Suddha sattva. In the material world, activities of goodness, which are symptomatic of a pure Brahman, are appreciated. But the activities of devotional service are Suddha sattva. In other words, they are on the transcendental platform. Only by devotional service can one understand the Supreme. And why is that? It's because, just as it's stated in the other verse, right? You can't understand Krishna by your material activities, whether it's mental or intellectual or functions of the consciousness. It's only by Krishna's mercy that he reveals himself to his devotee. So if one is not desiring that loving exchange, Krishna will not present it to you. Devotional service is called naishkarmya. Mere negation of material activity will not endure. Naishkarmyam apyachutya bhavan varicham. Unless one performs activities with reference to Krishna consciousness, cessation of material activities will not be helpful. In hopes of achieving naishkarmya, freedom from material action, many highly elevated sannyasis stopped their activities, yet they failed and returned to the material platform to act as materialistic persons. But once one is engaged in the spiritual activities of bhakti yoga, one does not fall down. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore an attempt to engage everyone always in spiritual activity, by which one becomes transcendental to material actions. The spiritual activities of Bhakti Marga, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smarnam, Padasevanam, lead one to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, as stated here, Satvena Pratitada Bhayaya, Naishkarmayena Vishpashtita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized by pure devotees who act in the transcendental existence of Bhakti Yoga. The Gopala Tapani Upanishad 15 says, Bhaktir Asya Bhajanam Tad Ihamukta Patadi Naraishya Dharina Vaishnanushim Manasya Kalpam Etad Eva Cha Naiska Karmya. This is a definition of Naishkarmya. One acts in Naishkarmya when he fully engages in Krishna conscious activities without material desires to enjoy, either here or in the upper planetary systems, in the present life or in a future life. Iha amutra. Anya bilalishta shunyam. When one is freed from all contamination and acts in devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, one is on the platform of Naishkarma. By such transcendental devotional service, the Lord is served. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So it's actually a very simple process. We just tend to complicate it due to the contaminated desires of our material mind and intelligence. Text 12. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Vasudeva, who is all-pervading, to the Lord's fierce form as Lord Nrsingadev, to the Lord's form as an animal, Lord Varahadev, to Lord Dattatreya, who preached impersonalism, to Lord Buddha, and to all the other incarnations. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has no material qualities, but who accepts the three qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance within this material world. I also offer my respectful obeisances unto the impersonal Brahman effulgence. Purport. In the previous verses, it has been described that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no material form, he accepts innumerable forms to favor his devotees and kill the demons. As stated in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, there are so many incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that they are like the waves of a river. The waves of a river flow incessantly, and no one can count how many waves there are. Similarly, no one can calculate when and how the different incarnations of the Lord appear, according to the necessities of time, place, and candidates. The Lord appears perpetually, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:7. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. In the material world, there is always the possibility of deviation from Krishna consciousness, and therefore Krishna and his devotees always act in various forms to curb such godlessness. So we spoke about this a little bit last week, and that because of the material contaminations that we bring with us when we try to follow the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master or take part in the process of devotional service, due to our past habits and contaminated mind, we have a tendency to corrupt the instructions of Krishna. We have a tendency to corrupt the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. We have a tendency to twist these things so that they suit our material desires instead of being seen in the light of pure devotion. And that's why the Lord constantly has to reappear in this world, is because he leaves it for some short amount of time. All time is short in comparison to the eternal nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But as it gets corrupted, he has to come again and again and again to put things back on course. Continuing the purport. Even impersonalists who stress the knowledge feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead want to merge in the effulgence of the Lord. Therefore, here the word jnana jnanaya indicates that for atheists who disbelieve in the form and existence of the Lord, all these various incarnations appear. Since the Lord comes to teach in so many forms, no one can say that there is no God. The word jnana is especially used here to refer to those whose knowledge has been solidified by dint of their searching for the Lord through speculative philosophical understanding. Superficial knowledge is useless for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when one's knowledge becomes extremely intense and deep, one understands Vasudeva. Vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatmana sadurabha. A jnani attains this stage after many, many births. Therefore, the word janmaganaya is used here. The word shantaya indicates that Lord Vasudeva is situated in everyone's heart, but does not act with the living entity. Impersonalist jnanis realize Vasudeva when they are fully mature in knowledge. Vasudeva sarvamiti samadhatmana sadurabha. So again, this is just another example of Krishna fulfilling the desire of the living entity. If one still wants to remain somehow separate or somehow equal to, in the illusion that they're equal to or even greater than Krishna, he will arrange for that. He will not force his love upon you. 13. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the super soul, the superintendent of everything, and the witness of all that occurs. You are the Supreme Person, the origin of material nature and of the total material energy. You are also the owner of the material body. Therefore, you are the Supreme Complete. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 13:3, the Lord says, Kshetra Jnanam Chapi Mam Vidhi Sarva Kshetrashu Bharata. O Skyan of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. Every one of us is thinking, I am this body, or this is my body. But actually, the truth is different. Our bodies are given to us by the Supreme Proprietor, the living entity, who is also Kshetrajna, or the knower of the body, is not the body's only proprietor. The actual proprietor of the body is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Kshetrajna. For example, we may rent and occupy a house, but actually, the owner of the house is the landlord. Similarly, we may be allotted a certain type of body as a facility with which to enjoy this material world, but the actual proprietor of the body is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is called Sarvayakdaksha because everything in the material world works under his supervision. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, whereas the Lord says, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa chara charam, wherein this material nature, working under my direction, O son of Kunti, is producing all moving and unmoving beings. From Prakriti, or material nature, come so many varieties of living entities, including the aquatics, plants, trees, insects, birds, animals, human beings, and demigods. Prakriti is the mother, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the father. Prakriti can give us material bodies, but as spirit souls, we are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 15:7. Mama imam so jiva loke, jiva bhutaha sanatana. The living entity, being part and parcel of God, is not a product of this material world. Therefore, the Lord is described in this verse as Atma Mula, the original source of everything. He is the seed of all existences. In Bhagavad Gita 14:4, the Lord says, it should be understood that all living entities and all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Plants, trees, insects, aquatics, demigods, beasts, birds, and all other living entities are sons or parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. But because they are struggling with different mentalities, they have been given different types of bodies. Thus, they have become sons of Prakriti, or material nature, which is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every living entity in this material world is struggling for existence, and the only salvation or relief from the cycle of birth and death in the evolutionary process is full surrender. This is indicated by the word namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Text 14. My Lord, you are the observer of all the objectives. My Lord, you are the observer of all the objectives of the senses. Without your mercy, there is no possibility of solving the problem of doubts. The material world is just like a shadow, resembling you. Indeed, one accepts this material world as real because it gives a glimpse of your existence. This is such a nice verse. Purport. To paraphrase this verse, the objectives of sensual activities are actually observed by you. Without your direction, the living entity cannot even take a step forward, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishtu matas mritir jnanam apino namcha. You are situated in everyone's heart, and only from you come remembrance and forgetfulness. Chayeva syasya bhuyani biharti durga. The living entity, under the clutches of Maya, wants to enjoy this material world, but unless you give him directions and remind him, he cannot make progress in pursuing his shadowy objective of life. The conditioned soul wrongly progresses toward the wrong objective, life after life, and he is reminded of that objective by you. In one life, the conditioned soul desires to progress toward a certain objective, but after his body changes, he forgets everything. Nonetheless, my Lord, because he wanted to enjoy something of this world, you remind him of this in his next birth. Because the conditioned soul wants to forget you, by your grace, you give him opportunities, life after life, by which he can almost perpetually forget you. Therefore, you are eternally the director of the conditioned souls. It is because you are the original cause of everything that everything appears real. The ultimate reality is your Lordship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. The word Sarva Pratnyana Haritave is explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who says that a result gives one a glimpse of its cause. For example, since an earthen pot is the result of the actions of a potter, by seeing the earthen pot, one can guess at the existence of the potter. Similarly, this material world resembles the spiritual world, and any intelligent person can guess how it is acting. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa charachara. The activities of the material world suggest that behind them is the superintendence of the Lord. So this is a very important point that you can use to help people begin to overcome their enviousness of God. When we're reaching out, trying to share Lord Chaitanya's mission with the conditioned souls in this world, sometimes it's a struggle to find that connection point, that point of commonality where they can start to relate to what you're saying. And I remember the day Jivan really introduced me to the Maha Mantra, the chanting. He gave that very example about how, because I was pretty much an atheist, I was so envious of Krishna, so attached to my material mental prowess. That by seeing the shadow of something, that shadow proves that that something exists, right? If you're walking down and you look down on the ground and you see your shadow, your shadow is only there because of two things, right? One, you're there, and two, there's a light source that's shining behind you or beside you that's causing that shadow to be projected onto the material energy. But if you did not exist, then that shadow couldn't exist either. So similarly, when we look at this material world and we look at life, we can understand that there is a supreme personality of Godhead. Just as the example was given here, that when you see an earthen pot or anything made by anyone in the material world, we can understand that that was made by someone, right? You have your smartphone or whatever, you pick it up, it does so many, apparently amazing things. But the fact that that phone exists points to the reality that someone made it. And if something as complicated as a cell phone, which is actually nothing in comparison to the phenomenal world that is here, then this automatically, to the non-envious person, points to the supreme controller, the supreme enjoyer, the supreme creator, the supreme personality of God. But due to our envious nature, we can't see it. You have so many material scientists who are on one level, very highly intelligent. They can manipulate the material energy in so many amazing ways. They can conjecture so many things by experiencing certain things in the material world, and then using their intelligence, draw so many conclusions. Yet, it's impossible for them to conclude that there is a supreme person who is responsible for everything, even though it's the only logical explanation. It's like you walk out into a field and there's a 747 sitting there, and someone tries to tell you, oh, this just happened, right? It's why not, right? It's just made of material energy, right? There's just earth, water, air, fire, ether, right? There's not even a mind or intelligence or false ego there, right? It's not even all 8 of the elements. It's only the first 5. But of course, any intelligent person is going to say, there's no way that this just happened to, what? Some big explosion happened and all these ingredients got blown up into the air, and they happened to come down in such a way that they formed this 747, right? Yet this is what the material scientists are trying to say. Oh, there was this big bang and the chemical elements combined in a certain way. They've never combined it again since that point, but they combined in a certain way and created this thing called life. And somehow another, life had this desire to constantly improve itself, right? And due to over this amazing, incomprehensible amount of time, through blind luck, through the survival of the fittest, now we have human beings and so many different varieties of species of life. No intelligent person should accept that explanation. There's no evidence of it happening anywhere, at any time, in any form of history. Yet this is the only explanation that they can bring themselves to accept. And they put it forth in all the schools as the absolute truth, even though they're constantly revising it as they're stumbling across different facts that disprove different parts of their theories. And so they're constantly having to adjust it. But due to their envious nature, they're just unable to scrap the whole thing and go, yeah, of course there's somebody that's creating this thing and putting it in motion. There's all these material laws of nature. Therefore, there must be a law maker, a law giver, who is putting this all together. But no, they can't accept it. And therefore, they're doomed to suffer birth after birth after birth. The ravages of Adhyatmic, Adhibodhic, and Adhidaivic. 15. My Lord, you are the cause of all causes, but you yourself have no cause. Therefore, you are the wonderful cause of everything. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the shelter of the Vedic knowledge contained in the Shastras like the Pancharatras and the Vedanta Sutra, which are your representations, and who are the source of the Parampara system. Because it is you who can give liberation, you are the only shelter for all transcendentalists. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. 4. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described herein as the wonderful cause. He is wonderful in the sense that although there may be unlimited emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he always remains complete. In our experience in the material world, if we have a bank balance of $1 million, as we withdraw money from the bank, the balance gradually diminishes until it becomes nil. However, the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is so complete that although innumerable personalities of Godhead expand from him, he remains the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is the wonderful cause. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. Brahma Samhita 5.1. Even in this material world, we can understand that the sun has existed for millions of years and has given off heat and light since its creation. Yet, the sun still retains its power and never changes. What then is to be said of the supreme cause, Param Brahma, Krishna? Everything emanates from him perpetually, yet he maintains his original form, Satchidananda Vigraha. Krishna personally says in Bhagavad Gita, everything emanates from me. Everything emanates from Krishna eternally, yet he is the same Krishna and does not change. Therefore, he is the shelter of all transcendentalists who are eager to get free from material bondage. Everyone must take shelter of Krishna. It is therefore advised, whether one desires everything or nothing, or desires to merge into the existence of the Lord, he is intelligent only if he worships Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by rendering transcendental loving service. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 2.3.10. Param Brahma, the Supreme Lord, and Param Dhamma, the Supreme Repose, is Krishna. Therefore, anyone who desires anything, whether he be a karmi, a jnani, or a yogi, should try to perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead very seriously, and all his desires will be fulfilled. The Lord says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante, tam tataiva bhajanti aham. As the living entities surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Even the karmi, who wants everything for his enjoyment, can get it from Krishna. For Krishna, supplying what he wants is not at all difficult. Actually, however, one should worship Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for the sake of getting liberation. Vadaischa samir aham eva vedya. By studying the Vedic literature, one should understand Krishna. As confirmed here, Sarvagamamananyata Mahatmanaiva. He is the ocean, and all Vedic knowledge flows toward him. Therefore, intelligent transcendentalists take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the ultimate goal. guys still awake? A lot being thrown at us here. We're not hearing anything new, right? We've all heard this from the time we were first introduced to Krishna, first introduced to the Bhagavad Gita, to the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's just the same things being repeated over and over with the hope that through this repetition, we'll gradually be able to come to the platform of being able to understand and accept. These are not complicated conceptions. It's all very simple. Right? There is obviously a source of everything. That source of everything is obviously supreme. Having come from that source, we have an eternal relationship with that source. Things do not come from nothing because we have intelligence, because we have emotions, because we have desires. These things must exist in their pure form in that supreme being. It's all very logical. It's all very straightforward. It is only our envious nature that makes it difficult to understand and to accept. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, all you have to do is surrender. Once you can come to that point of surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, understanding that you have nothing that is independent of Him. We're totally dependent on Krishna for every aspect of our existence. If I simply surrender to this truth, everything else falls into place. Everything else becomes relatively easy. So if we find ourselves in positions where we're being harassed by people who are envious of Krishna, who are not accepting Krishna as their supreme benefactor, as their best friend, as their most perpetual well-wisher, we simply have to find a way to enlighten them. All the conflicts of this material world are due to this lack of understanding. All the problems are automatically solved when one simply surrenders under the Supreme Personality of Godhead out of love. Yet we find it so difficult to do. Right? Find it so difficult to do. I think we're going to lose something if we surrender to Krishna. We think there's going to be some lack. We think we're going to be missing out on something. This is illusion. Krishna begins to explain this a little bit more in the next verse. Text 16. My Lord, as the fire in a Rani wood is covered, you and your unlimited knowledge are covered by the material modes of nature. Your mind, however, is not attentive to the activities of the modes of nature. Those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge are not subject to the regulative principles directed in the Vedic literatures. Because such advanced souls are transcendental, you personally appear in their pure minds. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Report. In Bhagavad Gita 10:11, it is said, for a devotee who has taken for a devotee who has taken the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart, the Lord gives spiritual enlightenment, known as Jnana Deepa, by special mercy from within. This Jnana Deepa is compared to the fire hidden within Arani wood. To perform fire sacrifices, great sages previously did not ignite a fire directly. The fire would be invoked from Arani wood. Similarly, all living entities are covered by the modes of material nature, and the fire of knowledge can be ignited only by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when one takes him within one's heart. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindadaya. If one takes seriously the lotus feet of Krishna, who is seated within one's heart, the Lord eradicates all ignorance. By the torch of knowledge, one immediately understands everything properly by the special mercy of the Supreme Lord and becomes self-realized. In other words, although a devotee may externally not be very well educated, because of his devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives him enlightenment from within. If the Lord gives enlightenment from within, how can one be in ignorance? Therefore, the allegation of the Mayavadis that the devotional path is for the unintelligent or uneducated is untrue. If one becomes an unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord, he automatically manifests all good qualities. Such a devotee is above the instructions of the Vedas. He is Paramahamsa. Even without going through the Vedic literature, a devotee becomes pure and enlightened by the mercy of the Lord. Therefore, my Lord, the devotee says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So the material world is created by Krishna for those souls who want to live in the illusion that they are separate from Krishna, that they're equal to or above Krishna. This is not our natural condition. This is not our natural state. Therefore, we have to be put into illusion to have that consciousness. One cannot be happy or satisfied, peaceful, anything, when one's living in illusion. Therefore, Krishna is always canvassing, always inviting us to come back, always inviting us to give up this poisonous mentality of being envious of the Supreme Lord. But for most of us, it's a very gradual process. And therefore, he's put together the Vedic literatures. And the Vedic literatures are a very gradual process by which one can be elevated from the modes of ignorance to the modes of passion, from the modes of passion to the modes of goodness. And finally, when one's in the mode of goodness, one can start to have some inklings of what real knowledge is. So within the Vedas, there's all kinds of baby steps to help people progress from the lowest levels of consciousness gradually up to the point of coming to being able to surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead out of love. So within the Vedic literatures, there's all kinds of ways to be promoted to the heavenly planets, right? Because why? We came here because we wanted to enjoy. Due to our demoniac tendencies and our demoniac activities, we're having to be punished in these lower planetary systems to try to learn a lesson. But that there's that carrot and the stick thing going on where, okay, if you engage in pious activities tend to be in the mode of goodness, then you can gain these higher planetary systems where you can enjoy for many thousands of years. You can have sense enjoyment on the level that's thousands of times greater and more all-encompassing than what's possible on this earthly planet. So these little carrots to gradually try to attract us back to the mode of goodness. And hopefully once we get to the mode of goodness, we can start to give up some of the things that are forced upon us by the modes of passion and ignorance and be able to actually begin to accept the concept of pure transcendental love. Because it's only when we come to that point of desiring pure, uncontaminated, transcendental love, which means that I have no self-interest, but I'm simply interested in bringing pleasure to my beloved, that one can actually make a real solution to all the problems we face. We just have to get from point A to point B. These are the processes of bhakti yoga. We want to eat, so Krishna says, yes, eat. Eat prasadam. Krishna says, you like nice food? I like nice food. Make me nice food. Offer it to me with love and devotion as best you can. If you don't have love and devotion for me, offer it through the agency of my pure devotee. My dear spiritual master, you've instructed me to offer this food to Krishna with love and devotion. I have no love and devotion. What am I supposed to do? How can I offer it? Krishna, you say, if it's offered with love and devotion, you'll accept it. I don't have any love and devotion. So I asked my spiritual master, my dear spiritual master, you're my ever well-wisher. You are inviting me back to Krishna. I have very little appreciation for you. I have very little insight into who you really are. But I'm begging you, please, ask Krishna to accept this offering. Because you have love and devotion with which to offer it. Arboveda. And now, what do I get? I get the wonderful remnants of that. I like to eat. I like to hear beautiful things. So let's make beautiful music and chant Krishna's beautiful names. I like to see beautiful things. So let's offer beautiful things to Krishna, beautiful flowers, decorate his form with beautiful clothing, different things. Everything we want can be Krishnaized, can be found in this process of sadhana bhakti. There's no difficulties. Only difficulties are the difficulties that we inject into it. So think we've gone far enough today. We'll wrap it up here, chant for a few minutes. Yeah.
Thank you for reading such nice words. I really appreciate it.
Well, at the end of the next chapter, there's going to be a blessing saying that, recommending that we hear this every day. The verses of Gajendra's prayers. So what I'm probably going to do is make a special playlist, even just hearing just the read of all the translations, so that if anybody wants to, every now and then they can just put them on and just hear all of Gajendra's prayers from start to finish.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And there's, just as usual, another wonderful blessing that, just by hearing these prayers, and we'll be guaranteed a spot in the spiritual world.
Thank you.
Right, chat for a couple of minutes. Never can think of a tune.
Do you have original sound on?
I don't think I do.
It didn't sound like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Eyeball, thank you.
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shimate Sara Swarupananda Amaham Sayite Namane. Namasara Swarupananda Amaham Sanam Purakaruna Swarupaya Hare Krishna Prasthaya. Namaste Saraswati Deva Bhavani Prachande Nirasesha Sunnavari Vastate Deshatane. Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Jaya, Shri Govinda, Gopinatha, Madana, Shamakuna, Radhakuna, Giridhara, Govinda, Jamuna Jaya, Jaya Jaya, Jaya Jaya, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Jaya Jaya, Jaya Jaya, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Jaya Jaya. Jaya Jaya, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya. Haribo, namaste.